Well, welcome everyone. I'm so excited you all decided to join us. I am a very special guest for you. Today, I am with the founder of Lifewave, the inventor, the scientist, the owner, and CEO, David Schmidt. And he is going to share with you some amazing information about this technology and how it works and what it can do for you as well. So, David, thank you so much for joining us. I am so grateful you took the time to be here. And I'd love for you to get started with just sharing, how did you get started in this process of inventing? How did that look for you in the beginning?
That's an embarrassing question. First, Dr. Stacy, thanks for having me. Great to be here. Always a pleasure to get an opportunity to speak with you. So thank you. I would say that I started from humble beginnings by taking apart my father's tools and my mother's appliances. So I was a very disruptive child growing up. I wanted to know how everything worked. So I would sneak down into our basement and take apart, the electric drill. And we had an induction heater. I remember taking that apart and the springs kind of flying everywhere. So it just started with this thirst for knowledge. And I would go down into our study and I would sit in a chair and I would grab books that were off the shelf. I would read the encyclopedia from front to back and just want to know, how do things work? And so I started to, from a very young age, I just started getting ideas and started to experiment. And I found that I loved it. It was just so fascinating to me, and I couldn't get enough of it.
Wow, that is amazing. And most kids don't do that as a child. Maybe tear things apart and don't put them back together, but then to figure out how to put things back together, that's amazing. So, did you have a mentor growing up that taught you this or that you looked up to in that department of inventing?
Yeah, when I was about 13 years old or so, I joined a prayer group that was in my town. And I've been a Christian in my entire life, and a spiritualist, and I'm interested in learning about God and having a relationship with God. So I joined a prayer group, and the fellow that ran the group, his name was Vince Valancourt. He was a chemical engineer, and he had many patents. I think it was over 100 patents, and he had developed different medical devices in his career. And most of his time was spent with Johnson and Johnson. So I became friends with him, and because he was considerably older, he was really like a father figure to me. And yeah, he definitely taught me a lot about the process of inventing. And then eventually, when I went to college, I got a degree in computer science and management. And about halfway through, I realized that I did not want to be a computer programmer, that I wanted to be in research. So when I got out of college the first time, I went to Mr. Valancourt and I asked him for a job, and he gave me a job at his company, and I got to work on designing medical devices as my first real job. So that was really fun.
Wow, and where did that take you? Medical devices are kind of, controversial today, maybe, possibly, or maybe not. There are so many life-saving things. So what path did that take you initially in your career?
Yeah, well, that was actually kind of interesting. The type of devices that we were working on were things like IV line sets, nasogastric tubes, and some of like one of the projects I remember I really liked was we looked at coating some of the IV line sets with different types of metals like gold and silver and copper, looking for their antibacterial effects. So if a nurse, for example, didn't wipe down a line with alcohol and bacteria got into the line, these metals would kill off the bacteria. So that was, more or less cutting edge back in the 80s when I was involved with it. And then, after doing that for a year, I went back to college to get a degree in biology. And I convinced the chairman of the biology department, William Ventura, to give me a research lab so I could do research in neuroblastomas. So I got a grant and got a donation from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and started working with mice on looking at subcutaneously injecting TBJ and C1300 neuroblastomas to look at the differences in immunogenic versus non-immunogenic effects. And that actually led to looking at how to use voltage to manipulate the membrane potential to selectively kill off cancer cells. So it got me thinking about energy medicine, and ultimately that helped me later with Lifewave.
And that was going to be my next question. So how did you come up with the idea to invent your first patch, which was energy enhancer with Lifewave? How did that happen? What was that process?
Yeah, so there were a lot of years that went into this. Fortunately, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I had horrific allergies. And I went on medications for maybe about 6 months, a year. And I was, drowsy all the time and I felt terrible. And I thought there has to be something else that can get rid of these allergies. So I just started reading everything I could about nutrition. My mother was a gourmet Italian cook and was always putting herbs in things. And, she used to tell me some about some Italian remedies. So I thought, oh, there has to be some type of herb or something. And eventually I did find natural remedies that worked for myself. And I've been free of allergies for, 40 years now. But this accumulation of knowledge into natural therapies took me into some very interesting places. So when I was in my 20s, I was building Rife devices, I was building plasma tubes, and looking at different energy medicine techniques. So when the time came in the 90s, I was working with a small group, and we were developing new types of survival equipment and power generation systems for the Navy. And I happened to develop a new type of oxygen generation system that they considered impossible. It shouldn't have done what it did. And so I got approached by one of the nuclear engineers at General Dynamics Electric Boat, and he invited me into this mini sub program for Navy SEALs. And he said, just take a look at this and, see if you can make a contribution. And the thing that really struck me was that this crew was going to go on missions that were 30, 60 hours long, and they were relying on caffeine and amphetamines to stay awake. And, given my interest in natural health, I thought, this could be an area where we could find a solution that was natural and would do a more effective job. So it took several years, but I came up with the concept of the energy patches.
Okay. Wow. So from a young age, because of what you went through, that brought you along the path to where this seemed like a perfect next fit.
Yes, it was definitely a progression. I can't say it was something that really happened overnight. Even the realization of the patches occurred because of an engine that we were developing. We were developing a new type of turbine that had a vortex flow. And I was driving home one day from work, and I was driving around Lake Lanier in Georgia. And I remember that the idea, downloaded into my head that there must be a vortex flow in the cells, and we could use that as a communications channel. So that was really the genesis of Lifewave.
Wow. So I would love for you to explain how this technology works. And knowing that we have people that are going to be listening to this that have never heard of Lifewave before, this is going to be their first exposure hearing. And then, of course, we have, everyone in between, all the way to we have doctors and practitioners that actually utilize light therapies in their practice or are very familiar with photobiomodulation. So how could you explain this technology to that wide range of people and yet be able to help them all understand what it is and how it works?
Sure. So the patches are a new form of low-level light therapy. They do, in fact, induce photobiomodulation, but they do it a little bit differently than an active device. So the patches, of course, contain organic materials. They're stereoisomers of amino acids and sugars and other materials and water-based solutions. And they're processed in a way so that when they're applied to the body, they're activated by the infrared body heat, and they'll start to reflect very specific wavelengths of light. So for those practitioners that already use light therapy, this would be a blend of different wavelengths of light. And the light is modulated to contain information. So this is very much like in laser communications, we might use a CO2 laser as an example, back in the day. And then like you would have with radio, you could frequency modulate the radio wave so it contain information. So you get site-to-site communication. So with the patches, it's very similar. We use a blend of different wavelengths of light, and those wavelengths are modulated to contain information. So when they stimulate the skin, they'll turn on a specific process. So with X39, it's going to upregulate mitochondrial function to improve energy output and turn on receptors associated with GHK-Cu. So we get an increase in copper peptide. And of course, that's measurable in the blood.
Right. And speaking of measurable, you have clinical studies. You've done many clinical studies over the years, over the last 20 plus years, correct?
Many, over 80 at this point. So I love the research process. And, current FDA standards are that you need one double-blind placebo-controlled study that you can make claims about your product and to support those claims. But the reason why we have so many is that when we do research, we learn more about what these products are doing, what effects they're having, and that allows us to not only expand our claims, but also develop other products as well. So we'll do traditional blood, urine, saliva testing. We do a lot of different types of bioelectrical tests. We'll do medical infrared imaging. And all of these different types of analytical equipment give us a different view as to what's happening inside the body when you apply the patches.
Okay. And so all the different studies show different things, and there are many. So if you had to pick, what would be your top 3 studies that you think are of most significance or relevance, or showed maybe the most that someone could go, because you have so many. And so if you're saying, hey, go check out our website, lifewave.com, you can find our clinical studies, what would be your top 3 picks?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I would have to say, on a personal level, my favorite studies are always the first ones that we do with a new product where we can say, okay, Eureka, the product does what it was designed to do. That is an incredible moment when you get your data back and it says, okay, this really does work. It's also a relief, because if you spend a few years, designing something and it doesn't work, it's a real bummer to see a study not turn out. So fortunately, we haven't really had any of those things. But yeah, I would say on X39, because it's our biggest product, it's about, 50% of our sales. The blood studies that we've done, which are on our website, those were incredibly rewarding. We spent 10 years and over $4 million doing stem cell research. We accumulated over 70 patents in the process. And so when we got the results back on X39 on the blood study, we're validated that we were seeing statistically significant increases in GHK. That was really incredible. I'd say another one that was incredibly rewarding was one that we did with Dr. Pierre Volkmann at General de Santé Hospital in Lyon, France. So I gave a presentation in front of a panel of medical doctors, And the French tend to be a little skeptical. I don't know if it's just their doctors, but that's what I've noticed. So when we gave our presentation, they said, well, that's interesting, but it doesn't really work. So I said, well, could I apply the patches to people in your hospital? And they started to bring me patients. And in about an hour period of time, they brought me 32 people, and I got 32 out of 32 people out of pain. They then said, okay, this obviously is not a placebo. There must be something to this. So we went ahead and we did a clinical study with 75 people. I think we had either 93 or 96% of the people got pain relief in that study. So that was incredibly rewarding, because Dr. Volkman is considered to be like the #1 expert on pain management in France. So to get the opportunity to do that study with him was pretty incredible.
And that's correct? That was Icewave?
Yeah, that was Icewave.
Okay, Icewave. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And then there is a study I can't tell you too much about because we just did it recently. It was a 20-person pilot study. And I may talk about this at convention in October. I'm not really sure yet. But this is a new technology that I've developed. It's not the patches. It's something that's designed to complement stem cell activity in the body. So it's like a perfect complement to X39. And we found that within 15 seconds of using this product, that was the average response time in 20 out of 20 people. Within 15 seconds, we were seeing very dramatic effects within the body. And we recorded that with interstitial scanning, with a physio suite that had HRV. We also had a infrared camera set up so we could see how light emission in the body changed, which it did. And we also did a blood analysis and urine analysis. And the urine analysis was incredible because when we got the data back, it was able to very clearly show the method of action. So I'm really excited about this product.
Okay, so let's just jump forward a little bit there. So I was going to ask you what was coming down the pipeline. So you may or may not share a little bit with us, but 15 seconds and 20 out of 20 people, that was the average, was 15 seconds that you could see measurable differences from this technology that you've invented that's not even on the planet yet for public consumption or use.
Yeah. So what I would say about this is on the 20 people, the worst that we did was 2.5 minutes, and the best we did was 3 seconds. So as an example, I'll give you an example. We had a woman that came in that was in her 60s, and she had had a heart attack. And so when we connected her on HRV, and heart rate variability is going to measure the ratio of muscle contractions in the 4 chambers of the heart. What you can see irregularities when someone's had a heart attack. So what we found was that the HRV normalized within about 2 to 3 minutes of using this product. With the infrared camera, it was really striking. We had seen with EEG, by the way, we saw a change within about 10 to 15 seconds. Biopulsar was about 10 seconds. You could see a change. That's going to measure, I think it's 48 different regions in the body, the bioelectrical regions in the body. The infrared was wild because right after people took this product, about 1 to 2 minutes later, you could actually see on infrared white light coming from their throat and from their head. Wow. Yeah, that was really extraordinary. But it was the urine data that was to me the most interesting, because objectively what it showed was how the product was doing what it was doing, and it showed an uptick in protein synthesis and amino acid utilization by 100 times over baseline. So we now, after completing after completing the pilot, we're moving to a double blind that's going to be 6 months. So what we're going to be, this will tell you a little bit about the product. We're going to be looking at the effect on telomeres. We're doing gene mapping to see the effect on gene expression. We'll of course do blood panels to make sure there's no adverse effects. So we'll look at CRPs and inflammatory cytokines. And we use another device called a Menelascan. One of the things that it will do is monitor mitochondrial function. So as long as the urine data continues to hold, it means that we're going to see an uptick in mitochondrial energy.
Wow. And we want this now. So you mean
yes.
we have to wait 6 months for the studies? Of course, you're utilizing this, correct, currently?
Yeah, I do have to say that it does have a side effect, which is in about, we had a trip to Aruba, and I had been using this product for about 3-4 weeks before Aruba, and I lost about 3 inches of fat around my waist. So this seems to upregulate and increase beta oxidation. So we'll continue to monitor that. But next year is our 20-year anniversary, and we want to do some special things for 20 years. So
we do, and this is it, right? We're going to roll this out.
Well, I don't want to make any product announcements, but I'd say that we want to do a lot of special things for the 20-year anniversary.
We are looking forward to that. Wow, David, that's amazing. So, gosh, how can you top that? But I do want you to talk a little bit about the most recent patch that you invented, which was the X49. And a lot of questions around, you have X39, X49, they sound similar. Does X49 activate stem cells? How is it different and or the same? And obviously together, you've done clinical studies with those together and separately. So the big question people have are, what is it doing hormone-wise, and how does it play in with stem cells, if it does?
Yeah, so those are all great questions. So the first thing is that X39 elevates GHK-Cu, so that's a glycine, histidine, lysine peptide. And glycine is ubiquitous. It's found throughout the body, very common amino acid. And the interesting thing about GHK is that it is a very high affinity for binding with copper. So it readily binds with copper, and as a result, both GHK and GHK-Cu have distinct and similar metabolic effects. But its really big advantage is that it can help to modulate about 1/3 of the human genome. So we know from epigenetics that as people age, there are certain genes that are supposed to be on that get turned off, and likewise certain genes that are supposed to be off that get turned on. And copper peptide has the ability to reset about 1/3 of the human genome back to a more youthful state. So you could say this is in essence partial age reversal. And one of the genes that copper peptide, the GHK, is going to activate is P63. So P63 is responsible for mobilizing or activating stem cells. So this is why we recommend that everyone use X39, because it has such broad effects, and that's the one that people should start with. Now, X49 was a very natural addition to our product line because it's AHK-Cu, which is an alanine histidine lysine peptide. So alanine is a little bit more laser focused as opposed to GHK. So alanine and AHK is going to be found in the brain, in the heart, in the muscle, in the bone, and in the skin. And there is, from my perspective, not enough research into peptides like carnosine and AHK. And I think ultimately we'll find peptides that have alanine that can be used therapeutically to treat a number of different health disorders. I'm not making any claims about our products. That's why I worded it the way that I did. So in any case, what's interesting is that in the research that Dr. Lauren Picard did on GHK and AHK, he found that GHK could be used topically to help stimulate hair growth, and that people that were getting injections of GHK could see some hair growth as well. When he started experimenting with AHK, he found it was about 10 times more effective at hair growth than GHK. And it was as effective in his studies as minoxidil. So actually, Lauren Picard, he will sell a topical solution of AHK and minoxidil specifically for hair growth. Hair growth, though, is a medical claim, and that's not something we've done a study on, so we don't know if our product does that. But what we have looked at is what would be the role of AHK in both bone and muscle. So could we induce osteogenesis, turn on the stem cells in the bone and induce osteogenesis? So we did a pilot study, and we took women over the age of 50, and we did in fact find that we could stop bone loss and increase bone density with X49. So that was a significant difference from X39. We also did a study using X49 on its own, and then X49 and X39 together. And we found that X49 does in fact improve strength, stamina, and muscle mass, and decrease body fat. So we believe that this is through activation of satellite stem cells in the muscle. But the hypothesis that X49, because of its alanine content, improves athletic performance is true. So that's what we found the uses for the product to be.
And then what about the component of the Faraday cage? Do we have clinical on that, or is that another hypothesis based on what you found? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so we did a pilot study on this. So I had this hypothesis that that essentially when God created us, he created us with the ability to upgrade. So that there were going to be things in the future that we were going to encounter as human beings, such as the heavy toxic burden that we find today, and that we would have the ability to adapt and survive. So one of these things, of course, is the advent of 4G, 5G, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and so we're being bombarded now by all this synthetic man-made radiation. And we know, going back to 3G, Colorado School of Medicine did some great work with infrared showing that cell phones do, in fact, increase the temperature of the brain and cause brain heating, right? And actually damage cells. So we know this is true. So what can we do about this? Well, copper is used to create Faraday cages, which block electromagnetic radiation. And we find already copper in the skin. As a matter of fact, on a doctor's call last night, what we were talking about was in my first patent, I was discussing how the copper in the skin and the iron in the blood actually form a Thomson-Zebek effect. And so human beings create a thermomagnetic field from heating the blood and cooling the skin. We get a temperature difference and we get a material difference. But in any case, what's important about this is our levels of copper decrease with age, and also our diets today are depleted of copper. And so what do we do about this? Well, the idea is that if we can take peptides that bind with copper and increase their presence in the skin, we might be able to use those peptides to block radiation. So there is actually, in fact, a study on copper peptide and its ability to protect women from radiation when women are going through chemotherapy and radiation treatments. So we did a preliminary study. We worked with a biochemist, and we took people that were electromagnetically sensitive, meaning that you give them a cell phone and they're going to experience intense pain and headaches. And we found that after 3 days of using X39 and X49, their levels of electromagnetic sensitivity dropped dramatically. Now, we did that just before the pandemic, and the study was going to finish up, but because of the pandemic, the clinic shut down, and we never got the opportunity to go back and finish the study. But we got preliminary results, and we're really excited about that.
Wow, thank you. That's great information. So I want to kind of piggyback off of that. I love how you're just feeding into my next question with talking about the pandemic. You know, health of our Americans and the world, the population, has definitely been damaged. Our health, right? Our immune system, what we're dealing with. I always say people have a grocery list of issues, right? Of little symptoms, things they want to check off. Well, that list has now become like a family of 20 long for one person. So if you were to talk to the population today, 3 years later, what would you recommend for patches? What would be like your top 3 patches you would recommend for them to help with the symptoms, the issues that people are dealing with that have just really gotten out of control, honestly?
Yeah. So, the first thing is I'm not a medical doctor, and we don't make any medical claims. So I want to take a step back for a moment and talk about maybe what the problem is in that light, and then recommend a few things. So first, at this point, I think we could say that nearly the entire population has the spike protein in their body, either through vaccination or through having COVID or being in proximity to someone that had COVID, or people in a relationship, and they're gonna get the spike protein. So we know today that this is causing very serious long-term effects. And these effects, as we've seen in our studies, we did 2 studies on the mRNA vaccines. So what we see is that post-vaccination and post getting COVID is that people have continued elevated levels of fibrinogen. They have elevated white blood cell counts, and they can even have mutation of the white blood cells. So unfortunately, many of the doctors that I speak to, we believe that over the next few years, there are going to be some dramatic increases in autoimmune disorders and cancer as a result of people's immune systems being worn out. So that's the bad news. The good news is that there are any number of different ways for people to get the inflammation under control and to decrease the burden on the immune system. So what are some things, that we know that can do that? First, I would reference some of the work that's being done by Dr. Peter McCullough. And he had recently referenced a study in Japan where nattokinase was used to dissolve the spike protein. I had last July 4th weekend, I got COVID. And fortunately, it didn't hit me too bad. But coming out of that, I had some residual inflammation. I took the nattokinase and it went away. So I personally saw an improvement in my health from using nattokinase. I would also recommend that everyone should be on some type of glutathione precursor, and there's any number of different ones to choose from. NAC is certainly readily available, and that, of course, is going to help to support glutathione levels, which are going to help keep inflammation under control. Depending on a person's age and health, they may want to look at other things like curcumin or DMSO or any number of different antioxidants to support their antioxidant system. From our perspective, the only thing we can talk about is maintaining health. And to me, the top three patches for helping to manage inflammation would be X39, Eon, and glutathione. So, for example, someone could use X39 and glutathione during the day, and then the Eon patch at night. And that would be a really nice combination to help support the immune system and manage inflammation.
Perfect. That's a great combination. I love those three for everything. So,
Yep.
David, are you able to share if someone, had a question on what would be a great recommendation for brain support, for heart, brain and heart? Are you able to share some patches that could help support the neurological system and the cardiovascular system?
Yeah, well, let's, given that our convention is going to be heart to heart, I'm actually going to be spending quite a bit of time, talking about that. And there is certainly a lot to talk about when it comes to cardiovascular health. First of all, I would recommend that everyone be going to their doctor at least once a year to get blood tests to, see where they are, maybe do an ultrasound on the carotid artery to look at whether or not they have arterial plaque, get some good diagnostics and find out what's going on. I'll get to the patches in a moment, but first thing is that most medical doctors are not trained in nutrition, and they're trained to prescribe drugs or recommend surgeries, and so they're not often aware that there are a number of natural remedies that are very, very effective for reversing things like arterial plaque. So, for example, pomegranate. There was a study that was done on pomegranate juice and SOD. As a matter of fact, the company Life Extension sells a product called endothelial defense, and they used to have a clinical study on their website, which I suppose the FDA caused them to take down. But what was shown in that study when it was available is that after about 9 months of taking a pomegranate extract, you could remove all of the arterial plaque in the body, and people that were candidates for bypass surgery no longer required it. So there's a number of nutrients like that, like pomegranate extract, like buckwheat seed extract, that can help reduce arterial plaque and improve the endothelial lining. So at convention, I'm going to do, kind of like a comprehensive view of that. Also, as people age, I would really recommend that they go on a product to help support nitric oxide levels so they get good blood flow, they can keep their blood pressure in check. And there's any number of natural nutrients that will do that. Red Korean ginseng is really excellent at doing that. Beets, of course, are really great natural source of naturally occurring nitrites for elevating nitric oxide. And of course, citrulline, because it converts to arginine in the blood, is yet another way of doing it. And not only is it great for your heart, but of course for men and women, it's going to help support overall sexual health. On the patches, we've done a number of studies. So with the energy patches, we did heart rate variability tests at University of Texas, El Paso. And that was on the energy patches applied to the wrists at the pericardium point. And we got statistical significance at the energy patches improving HRV. So energy patches on the heart meridian or the pericardium meridian is going to be very good for that. We've also done studies with the carnosine patch. So not surprisingly, carnosine is an antioxidant. It's found in the muscle and in the heart, and it can help to support improve athletic performance and also support overall heart function. We did a study on X39, and actually that was one of the early studies that we did, and that was shown to improve the health of the heart and even actually reverse the age of the heart. So yeah, I would say for people that are have high blood pressure, they're concerned about some other issues with the health of their heart, there are many natural alternatives. I wouldn't resort to drugs or surgery until someone saw their doctor and tried a complete system of natural remedies first, because there are many.
I agree. Totally. Thank you. So one other question on patches, and then I'll move on, or on a system in general. So with hormones, I know for you, your latest creation invention that has been brought to market is the Shine and Dream for your own need of turning 60 back in April, to
Right.
better your own body. And so could you talk a little bit about male and female hormones and what would be your recommendation or suggestions for that?
Yeah, I think obviously men and women, they both have their own individual needs. And of course, as men and women age, I think doctors, they have a tendency to get people on hormone therapy, which for some people is necessary, right? Not everyone is going to respond to different types of natural remedies. But again, I'd say it's really worth getting a good doctor, developing an individual program, and seeing whether or not a natural approach would work first. So, obviously, as a man, I have a perspective of many things that I've done that have worked out, really, really well for me. But the basis of developing Shine and Dream was the phenomena of olfaction. So, the FDA today, they consider anything that you inhale to be a drug. So even if you inhale an herb, it's considered to be a drug. So the only thing we can say really about these products is that you just have to enjoy the aroma or the scent, right? That would really be about it. But there was a scientist that discovered that inhaling truffles, not the chocolates, but the fungus, that inhaling the truffle mushrooms, they contained natural androgens, and they could in fact elevate testosterone in both men and women. And women, of course, they need testosterone just as much as men do, even though we think of it as being, a male hormone. And so I reached out to this scientist, and he had cultivated a specific type of truffle for this, but he wasn't able to reproduce it. So I thought, well, I'm sure there's other things in nature that contain some of these natural androgens, and there must be a way that we can optimize this. So I spent a few years, and I focused in on pine pollen, but a very specific type of pine pollen. And found that it had an excellent profile for both men and women in terms of natural androgens, and also being a natural source of DHEA, and blended the pine pollen with a number of different essential oils and herbs to optimize the effect. So Shine basically is going to help to support healthy testosterone levels in both men and women. And Dream is going to support sleep. And actually, when I was developing Dream, when I came up with the first formula and I was checking the scent, I got home that night about 6 o'clock and I felt exhausted. And I didn't realize that I had overdid it. And it was a Saturday, and my kids invited me to dinner. And I fell asleep, and I woke up like 6 hours later at midnight. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I've been drugged. But I had inhaled an enormous beaker, of this, which we don't recommend. But yeah, we did in fact, find out that that Dream works extremely well at inducing sleep. And of course, that's going to help to improve levels of GABA, BDNF, melatonin, and other hormones in the body.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, David. Well, I appreciate that information on some of the patches and products. That's a very, very beneficial, I know, for everyone. So my question next is, all of this is housed inside of Lifewave, which is a multi-level marketing company. And when you're especially talking to a lot of just people, but doctors and practitioners, they want to know, why did you choose MLM? I'm grateful you did, because it's my modality of choice for building a business for 20 years. But why have you chosen that yourself? And were there any, you know, were you like all in, gung ho, let's do this? Or were you skeptical about it? How'd you feel about that?
I'm not sure I chose network marketing. I think that was the path that was put before me. That's what the Lord intended. Yeah, yeah. I was against network marketing. When I started the company in 2002, it was July of 2002. I had some early samples of the product, and I went out to the Mr. Olympia conference in Las Vegas, and I thought, oh, this could be a good opportunity to, see what the interest level would be. So I got a table there, and on the way out to Las Vegas, I met this guy, Dave Savola, who was #1 distributor in a network marketing company, and we got to talking, and he said, you have the perfect product for network marketing. And I said, well, I don't know about your industry. I haven't heard such good things, so I don't think that's the direction I would go in. And then, along the way, I met different people, and I met this guy who was interested in investing, and he was in construction. So he said, let me have you talk to a medical doctor. Then that medical doctor said, oh, let me refer this out to a friend of mine in California. And then that medical doctor referred me to Coach Richard Quick at Stanford. And I thought, okay, and then I flew out to Stanford to meet with Richard Quick, who is a 6-time US Olympic coach, and said, the reason why I'm here is because of networking. And so in August of 2004, I started Lifewave as a network marketing company, and 3 months later, in November, we went to market, and we did $500,000 in sales our very first month.
Wow.
So it was pretty clear that this was the right way to go.
Wow, that's great. And we're so grateful you listened to God and listened to those signs and followed that path. Of course, here we are almost 20 years later. So along that journey, what would you say would be your biggest influence or mentor, or in the world of personal development and growing a business? There's a lot to growing a business, and obviously we have a team of people in our organization that are growing businesses. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations? Who were your mentors along the way in building a business, or any books or anything like that you would like to share with us, with the field, to be able to help in that journey of building their Lifewave business?
Yeah, so I would say, some of the most important things is first to have a daily life of prayer and to give thanks. It's so important. We already know it's important in our personal lives when we're in a relationship to give thanks to our partner. When our partner does something or our kids do something, and we show appreciation, we know that builds and strengthens the relationship and brings us closer to people. Well, it's extremely important to give thanks to God and to have a relationship with God and have a life of prayer. So I would say set aside some time. I like to do a Bible study or have a prayer in the evening before I go to sleep. And then it gives me a chance to meditate and, think about those things. And that's really made an enormous difference in my life. And I really wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for God. And, also what I would say is you shouldn't be a business owner or an entrepreneur unless you're willing to take risks and feel some of the pain of being an entrepreneur. And I would recommend embracing that. So there's going to be plenty of times as an entrepreneur and business owner when you're going to go through the fire. You're going to have all kinds of challenges. There was a period of time in 2006 where Lifewave almost went out of business. We were the victims of a credit card fraud. And we had a distributor that purchased fraudulent credit cards, started placing orders, and it caused an enormous damage to the business. And it took us 16 months to recover. So during that time, I didn't take a salary, and I lived off of savings. I got, I think it was $30,000, $50,000 in debt. And, but I believed in the business, and I wanted it to be my future. And then in 2008, we made a complete turnaround, and our sales doubled year over year for 3 years in a row. So, you know, those things are opportunities to strengthen your relationship with God, be patient and persistent, just keep working, and see yourself out the other side. And when you have those experiences, then when other challenges come up in life, you can say, okay, I got through that really terrible thing. I can handle this new thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A grateful heart is a magnet for more things to be grateful for, right? Always.
Absolutely.
And prayer, definitely. I end my night that exact same way every single night. I think it's so important to give thanks and take some time to count your blessings, for sure. So David, to wrap up, can you share with us, you know, what's the future of Lifewave look like to you? You know what's coming, or most of what's coming, or a lot of what's in the pipeline. What's the future of Lifewave look like?
Yeah, so I'll have to be careful here that I don't give away too many things. And I do want to unveil some new things at convention in October. You know, Lifewave, we started as a patch company, and we migrated into a health technology company, and now we're really a technology company. And that's an important distinction because of where it is that we're going. We will continue to release new health products and health technologies, but we're branching out far beyond that, not only to expand our business opportunity, but also to empower people. So, for example, one of the things that I showed at a previous convention that we've continued to work on is an agricultural system. So, you know, it's no surprise that our food supply is corrupt, and it's only going to continue to get worse with GMOs and with the way regulations and the government has positioned things. So people are going to need access to fruits and vegetables that have not been corrupted. So we've been developing a new type of agricultural system that uses technology to grow fruits and vegetables that are beyond organic. And they can do that right from their home, and the system is scalable, and they'll be able to do that on whatever level they want, something very small or something very, very big. So that's something new that's coming down the line in the future. There's another project that I talked about last year, and I may talk about it again this year at convention. Not that, I may talk about that. No, this is actually a completely new technology. And yeah, I don't think I want to talk about it right now, but I think what I would say is that we're branching out far beyond health products. And we're looking at helping people to be independent in all the ways that really matter in life, so they can be sheltered from some of the things that are coming down the road. So when we're thinking about the future, we're thinking 3, 5, and 10 years down the road. I guess one thing that I could say is, you know, we released last year our humanitarian drone. And we did that so we could continue to foster our relationship with the Red Cross. But I also said there was technology in the drone that we were developing to become a future Lifewave product, and that's absolutely true. So if you come to convention this year, you might see a little bit more of that.
Wonderful. Well, we are excited about that. I love the idea of being able to, for you to do that, for us to create many different avenues for us to be able to help ourselves, not only in business, but our own lives. We're searching, right? We are out there searching for ways to be able to be self-sustainable. So thank you for being open to that and taking that information and applying it and being willing to bring those types of things to market in the future. So we are so grateful and looking forward to that. Well, David,
Same.
I am just beyond in gratitude for you taking the time to be here with us, to pour into us and answer the questions that I have. And I know that the field has. Do you have any last things you'd like to share before we hop off of here tonight?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Stacy, for your time, and always a pleasure to get a chance to speak with you and to your team. And yeah, I think just in closing, we all go through different struggles in life, whether or not that's going to be with our health or our finances, family problems. What I would say is adopt a life of prayer. Turn to God no matter how desperate things will be. And there's always hope. There's always solutions. And we have an amazing community of people that just simply want to help and improve people's lives. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to be a part of our community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. Thank you again for being here. So grateful. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you all. See you later.